Today, we are going to kind of dive into this story that's been making a lot of gamers feel nostalgic, maybe even a little heartbroken. And we're talking about the shutdown of The Simpsons. Tapped out, it officially went offline January 24th. And for over a decade, this mobile game let players build their own versions of Springfield, with all the characters and all the landmarks we've come to love.
It really was kind of a phenomenon. You know, these articles from GamerRant and comicbook.com, Tapped Out went through 308 updates over its lifespan, 831 characters, over 1,400 quest lines. I mean, that kind of dedication from EA, that's pretty rare in the mobile gaming world. And it clearly resonated with a massive audience.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why the reaction to the shutdown has been pretty intense. Players are sharing stories about how much time they put in, all the effort they poured into crafting their digital Springfields, and there's a real sense of loss. GamerRant actually highlights a petition with almost 20,000 signatures, urging EA to keep the servers running.
That's interesting. That petition actually raises questions about who really owns these digital spaces that we invest so much in. In the case of Tapped Out, players often spent their real money on in-game currency, donuts, to speed up progress, or get premium items. So when the game shuts down, all those investments basically vanish.
Yeah, and that's a point of contention for a lot of players. One really moving comment from a player named Red Queso One, it really stuck with me. They talked about being a disabled gamer and how Tapped Out really gave them a sense of escape and accomplishment, especially after a surgery that made it hard to play console games. Just the simple act of tapping was a comfort, and losing that has been really tough.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that for a lot of people, these games aren't just distractions. They're really important parts of their lives, that sense of community. And connection, it can be really strong in a game like Tapped Out, where people have been building and sharing their creations for years.
Right. And comicbook.com makes this really interesting comparison to Animal Crossing, Pocket Camp, which shut down last year, but actually allowed players to buy like a complete offline version of the game, so they could keep playing. Even without the live servers, EA hasn't offered anything similar for Tapped Out, and that's kind of fueling some of that anger and frustration.
Yeah. Well, this highlights a bigger trend in the gaming industry, what's called like games as a service. And, we're seeing more games designed to be ongoing experiences, requiring a constant internet connection and updates. This allows for features like live events and, multiplayer interactions. But it also means that the game's existence depends entirely on the company maintaining those servers.
So even if you've invested a lot, in a game like Tapped Out, there's always that risk that it could just disappear overnight. It's almost like you're renting access to a digital world rather than truly owning it. And for players who've spent years building up their Springfield, that can feel pretty unfair.
For sure. Especially since EA hasn't given like a clear explanation for this shutdown. There's speculation that it wasn't profitable enough, or maybe they're shifting focus to newer, more lucrative projects. But without transparency from the company, players are left wondering, what happens to all that time, all that effort, even money they put into the game?
Yeah, it's a situation that raises a lot of questions about the future of digital ownership, especially in the gaming world.
Yeah, and this conversation actually kind of extends beyond just the Simpsons. Tapped Out, EA is actually shutting down a bunch of other mobile and console games in 2025, some of which, like Madden, NFL 21, were released pretty recently.
That's right. And while some of those games have like offline modes, a lot of them are going completely dark. So this isn't just a Simpsons thing. This is something that's affecting a ton of players across different genres and platforms.
It really makes you wonder what EA's long-term strategy is. Are they just trying to like streamline their offerings, maybe focusing on a few key franchises? Or is this a sign of like a broader change in how they approach game development and monetization?
But one theory is that they're really doubling down on that games as a service model and focusing on titles that can generate that ongoing revenue through microtransactions and subscriptions. And this could explain why they're less interested in supporting older games that maybe aren't generating as much profit anymore.
Yeah, that's a pretty plausible explanation to think about. What this means for the future of single-player offline games. Will we see fewer of them being developed as companies prioritize those online experiences that can be monetized over time?
Yeah, it's a valid concern. But on a more optimistic note, this shutdown has really sparked a lot of conversation about what a new Simpsons game could look like. GamerRant mentions there's this huge demand for a remaster of The Simpsons, Hit and Run, that classic open-world game from the PS2 era.
Oh, man. Hit and Run. That was basically Grand Theft Auto in Springfield.
Yeah.
And it really captured that anarchic, satirical spirit of just perfectly, a remaster.
Right.
With updated graphics and gameplay mechanics. That would be a huge hit.
Right, and it could introduce a whole new generation to the joy of causing mayhem
Yeah.
as Homer Simpson. Plus, it wouldn't be reliant on online servers, so you wouldn't have to worry about it disappearing one day.
Exactly. And if you look at what happened with SpongeBob games, those remasters of Battle for Bikini Bottom and the Cosmic Shake were really well received, and they paved the way for brand new titles like SpongeBob SquarePants, the Cosmic Shake.
So there's definitely a precedent there for reviving these classic franchises through remasters. It could be a win-win for both EA and Simpsons fans. But beyond remasters, what kind of new Simpsons game do you think would really resonate with players today?
Well, one thing that Tapped Out really did well was tap into that sense of humor and satire that's so central to The Simpsons. Any new game would need to carry that torch, offer that sharp wit, social commentary, alongside engaging gameplay.
Totally agree. It's got to be funny. But it also has to make you think a little bit. And I think there's a lot of potential for a really fun multiplayer experience. Like imagine teaming up with your friends to cause chaos in Springfield, or competing in ridiculous challenges like a virtual Springfield Olympics.
Oh, I love that idea. It could even incorporate elements of Tapped Out, like allow players to build
Yeah.
and customize their own little corner of Springfield while also engaging in those more action-packed adventures.
That's a really cool concept, combining the town building aspect with a more dynamic open world experience. You could have missions that parody classic video games or even current events, just like the show does. I mean, the possibilities are kind of endless.
Right. And think about all the different characters you could incorporate from the show's history. You could have side quests involving everyone from Comic Book Guy to Sideshow Bob, each with their own unique quirks. And storylines.
This is getting me really excited. But if EA does decide to develop a new Simpsons game, they need to avoid some of the pitfalls that Tapped Out faced towards the end, especially when it comes to monetization.
Yeah, that's a really crucial point. That freemium model. It was successful at first, but became a source of frustration for a lot of players. Any new game would need to find that balance between offering those in-app purchases and respecting players' time and investment.
Yeah, nobody wants to feel like they're being nickel and dimed constantly, especially in a game where you're already emotionally invested in your virtual world.
Right. They could learn from other successful mobile games that offer more value for money, maybe through achievements, daily challenges, or limited time events that reward players with in-game currency without making it feel like a constant grind.
And they could focus on creating, more compelling endgame content that keeps players engaged, even after they reach a certain level, maybe branching storylines that offer different outcomes based on player choices, or more challenging social features like guilds or clans that encourage collaboration and competition.
Those are all great suggestions. The key is to create a game that feels fair and rewarding to players, but also offers enough depth and variety to keep them coming back for more.
It's interesting we spent all this time talking about the Shutdown and EA's strategy and,
Yeah.
all the possibilities for these new Simpsons games. But what about the players who spent countless hours building their virtual Springfields? I mean, what does this loss mean for them?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's easy to get caught up in the business side, but games are really about creating experiences and connections.
Yeah.
And for a lot of tapped out players, this Shutdown feels like losing a part of themselves.
Yeah, reading through the comments, you see all this nostalgia and grief. Players are sharing screenshots of their towns, and they're reminiscing about their favorite events and characters, expressing gratitude for the friendships that they made in the game. I mean, it's clear that Tapped Out was way more than just a way to pass the time for people.
Yeah, it really became like a community, a creative outlet, even a source of comfort and support. And that's not something that you can easily replace. I think it really speaks to the power of games.
Yeah.
To create these meaningful experiences.
Yeah.
Even in digital spaces.
Absolutely. And it makes you wonder, what happens to all those virtual Springfields? Those meticulously crafted digital worlds that players put so much of themselves into?
Yeah, it raises a fascinating question about, preserving digital culture. Will there ever be a way to archive these virtual spaces? Maybe create a museum where players can revisit their creations and relive those memories? Or are they just destined to disappear, lost to the ever-changing digital landscape?
Yeah, it's kind of a sobering thought, especially when you think about how much of our lives is now lived online. What happens to our digital footprint, our virtual possessions? when the servers shut down, or the platforms we use become obsolete.
Right. It's a question that goes way beyond gaming. It touches on these broader issues of data ownership, digital legacy, and how temporary the online world really is.
What does this all mean? I think it means The Simpsons. Tapped out may be gone, but its legacy, the impact it had on the players, the questions that it raises about digital ownership, all that will continue to resonate.
I agree. And who knows, maybe this is just the start of a new chapter in Simpsons gaming, one that takes the lessons learned from Tapped Out and uses them to create something even more engaging, more meaningful, and more respectful of players' time and investment.
Yeah, I hope so. And maybe someday. Those virtual Springfields will find a way to live on, preserved as a testament to the creativity and the passion and the community that flourished within those digital walls. But until then, we'll just have to cherish the memories and keep our fingers crossed for what the future holds. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.